On February 1st, 1978, anti-slavery crusader and Civil War veteran Harriet Tubman becomes the first African American woman to appear on a U.S. postage stamp, the first in the Post Office's Black Heritage Series. Today is February 1st, 2024, and I would like to bring you this day in history. Tubman's appearance on the stamps was symbolic both for the progress made in recognizing African Americans' contribution to American history and of the ongoing effort to put abolitionists on equal footing with slave owners in the nation's historical canon. Tubman was a singular figure of the abolition movement, an enslaved woman who escaped captivity in Maryland and made at least 19 trips back to free more enslaved peoples. Tubman is estimated to have helped several hundred enslaved people find freedom in Canada via the Underground Railroad and is said to have never lost a passenger. During the Civil War, she freed more than 700 when she led Union forces on a raid on Combahee Ferry in South Carolina. In her later life, though she had little money of her own, Tubman worked to house and free the poor and became an important figure in the fight for women's suffrage. Despite these extraordinary efforts, which earned her the epithet, the Moses of her people, Tubman did not receive a pension for her service in the war until 1889 and died with little to her name. Her deeds went unforgotten, however, and in the wake of civil rights and Black Power movements, there was a push to recognize overlooked figures like Tubman. Her inclusion in the Black Heritage Series put her along figures like Martin Luther King Jr., Booker T. Washington, and Jackie Robinson, and spread her image around the country. In 2016, following years of call from activists, Treasury Secretary Jack Lew announced that Tubman's face would replace that of President Andrew Jackson, a slave owner and avowed white supremacy, on the $20 bill. The following year, Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin delayed the switch, saying, "We've got a lot more important issues to focus on." In January 2021, President Biden's administration announced they were taking steps to move forward with the redesign. Now I'd like to bring you yet another This Day in History. On February 1st, 1979, the Ayatollah Khomeini returns to Iran in triumph after 15 years of exile. The Shah and his family had fled to the country 2 weeks before. A jubilant Iranian revolutionaries were eager to establish a fundamentalistic Islamic government under Khomeini's leadership. Born around the turn of the century, Ruhollah Khomeini was the son of an Islamic religious scholar and in his youth memorized the Quran. He was a Shiite, a branch of the Islam practiced by a majority of Iranians, and soon devoted himself to a formal study of Sharia Islam in the city of Qom. A devout cleric, he rose steadily in the Shiite hierarchy and attracted many disciples. In 1941, British and Soviet troops occupied Iran and installed Mohammad Reza Pahlavi as the second modern Shah of Iran. The new Shah had close ties with the West, and in 1953, British and U.S. intelligence agents helped him overthrow a popular political rival. Mohammad Reza embraced many Western ideas, and in 1963 launched his White Revolution, a broad government program that called for the reduction of religious estates in the name of land redistribution, equal rights for women, and other modern reforms. Khomeini, now known as the high Shiite title Ayatollah, was the first religious leader to openly condemn the Shah's program of westernization. In fiery dispatches from his Fazia seminary in Qom, Khomeini called for the overthrow of the Shah and the establishment of an Islamic State. In 1963, Mohammad Reza imprisoned him, which led to riots, and on November 4, 1964, expelled him from Iran. Khomeini settled in Najaf, a Shiite holy city across the border in Iraq, and sent home recordings of his sermons that continued to incite his student followers. Breaking precedents with the Shiite tradition that discouraged clerical participation in government, he called for Shiite leaders to govern Iran. In the 1970s, Mohammad Reza further enraged Islamic fundamentalists in Iran by holding an extravagant celebration of the 2,500th anniversary of pre-Islamic Persian monarchy and replaced the Islamic calendar with a Persian calendar. The discontent grew. The Shah became more repressive and support for Khomeini grew. In 1978, massive anti-Shah demonstrations broke out in Iran's major cities. Dissatisfied members of the lower and middle class joined the radical students, and Khomeini called for the Shah's immediate overthrow. In December, the army mutinied, and on January 16, 1979, the Shah fled. Khomeini arrived in Tehran in triumph on February 1, 1979, and was acclaimed as the leader of the Iranian Revolution. With religious fervor running high, he consolidated his authority and set out to transform Iran into a religious state. On November 4, 1979, the 15th anniversary of his exile, students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took the staff hostage. With Khomeini's approval, the radicals demanded the return of the Shah to Iran and held 52 Americans hostage for 444 days. The Shah died in Egypt of cancer in July 1980. In December 1979, a new Iranian constitution was approved, naming Khomeini as Iran's political and religious leader for life. Under his rule, Iranian women were denied equal rights and required to wear a veil. Western culture was banned, and traditional Islamic law and its often brutal punishments were reinstated. In suppressing opposition, Khomeini proved as ruthless as the Shah, and thousands of political dissidents were executed during his decade of rule. In 1980, Iraq invades Iran's oil-producing province of Kazakhstan. After initial advances, the Iraqi offense was repulsed. In 1982, Iraq voluntarily withdrew and sought a peace agreement, but Khomeini renewed fighting. Stalemates and the death of thousands of young Iranian conscripts in Iraq followed. In 1988, Khomeini finally agreed to a UN-brokered ceasefire. After Ayatollah Khomeini died on June 3, 1989, more than 2 million anguished mourners attended his funeral. Ali Khomeini became supreme leader. Gradual democratization began in Iran in the early 1990s, culminating a free election in 1997 in which the moderate reformist Mohammad Khatami was elected president.